Hi, my name is Brayton Oski,
And I'm Austin Morales, and you're watching The Inner Gamer On.
and today we'll be talking with Adam Davis from Game to Grow, their nonprofit organization all about using games for therapeutic social skill groups and more. We're really excited to talk to them, so let's jump on in and find out what they have to say and what they're doing for our future generations.
And as always, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and bang that bell, because you know you want to.
Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Yeah, we were talking before we started recording. I think we had you back on around 2016, and
It was right when Game to Grow was being launched.
yeah, so a lot has changed. So since then, give us a little bit of a update. Tell us about Game to Grow, first of all, for those that haven't heard of you before, haven't heard the last podcast we had with you, and what you guys have been up to in the last several years.
Sure, yeah. So for those that aren't familiar with Game to Grow is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based in the greater Seattle area, and our mission is the use of games of all kinds for therapeutic, educational, and community growth. What we're most well known for is our therapeutic social skills groups using Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games, though we also have therapeutic social skills groups using Minecraft, and we've used Magic the Gathering and other tabletop games of all kinds. We serve youth and teens and adults. And in the midst of COVID, we've expanded to serve worldwide. So we have people from not just the United States, but also we have participants in Denmark and Australia and Malaysia and Ireland. So it's been a really fantastic opportunity now for us to serve a much wider population. And also we've, in addition to the direct services, our mission also includes the training and education for other facilitators to take this intervention style to their own communities. And then we also, part of our mission is to raise the awareness of the life-enriching magic of games.
How did you guys evolve and change this to include these other types of initiatives like the Minecraft and then the Magic and stuff like that? Like where did that come from, and what led into the transition? And
yeah, so the last time I was on, it was here with Adam Johns, who's the other founder of Game to Grow. And I think at the time we were still running a very small 2-person for-profit company called Wheelhouse Workshop. And that was founded off of Adam and I's interest in the role-playing game program we were running and the excitement that we had about what we were seeing in our clients, about the insight, growth, and change that was possible when it was an intentionally facilitated role-playing game experience. And we wanted to make that bigger than what we could do just the two of us. We wanted to expand our programming in the 3 ways I just spoke about a moment ago. And so what we did is we launched Game to Grow as a nonprofit. We got some startup grants from Child's Play. And then we started hiring people, which is was a great way to expand our programming in the Seattle area. So we hired Michael, and we hired Carrie, and then we expanded again. We hired Andrew and Akira, and then we just had an ever emerging number of clients we were serving in Seattle. And then it was one of our employees named Akira has been playing Magic forever. So and he was like, I think I could do some great work using Magic the Gathering, and so we started that program in Seattle where he was doing a drafting program where the youth would engage in, and we got some Magic the Gathering donations. So people would open the boxes and the booster packs in session and then talk about drafting and use it as a mindfulness practice to understand being in the present moment, reflecting on all of the potential opportunities, but not getting lost in the future, and really helping them sort of stay present. And then reflect on their own experience while they were drafting. So that was a really cool program. We had to shut that one down in the midst of COVID because we can't do that one as easily virtually as we could in person. But that was a fantastic program. And then as far as launching the Minecraft program, Adam and I both have been good friends and colleagues with Johnny Spangler, who has been running Minecraft-based social programs for a long time. So we basically went to him and said, hey, we want to expand into Minecraft. We want to bring you on board. And then he's been working with Carrie Yarvi, who's one of our other facilitators, one of our first hires, to launch that Minecraft program. And now we have, I think, 4 different Minecraft groups a week where the participants can come they play Minecraft. They co-build things together. So they talk about how and what they want to build, and they give each other tours of what they're building. They have explorations in creative mode and in survival mode, and then they also play mini games. They play mini golf, all the kinds of modifications to the game. So they're I sat in on 5 weeks of that, so I could get a better sense of how it worked, and I co-built a little soup restaurant with one of our players. Who was so excited to collaborate on what kinds of building materials we were going to use. And then we made sure we had the mushrooms in the back so that we're the right sort of mushroom soup that we were making for our pretend customers. And we allowed the other players in the group to come into our little soup restaurant and pretend that they were ordering soup. It was really fun.
I mean, I'm curious to know, like, what do families get involved with this? Like, after they've seen the response that their kids have had, like, do you see that a lot of that happening where they'll want to do this themselves, like with the kids after the fact, outside of the programs that you all have?
A lot of the families that come to us, especially for our Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing game programming, the parents are old school gamers. So they are also using this opportunity to connect with their child in a way, because they may or may not have had success in trying to get a family game night going. So then when we can play with the child and then really in a very safe and supportive way help them understand the benefits of this kind of hobby, then the family can really coalesce and play together. So that is one thing we've seen when parents are already interested and excited about tabletop role-playing games. A lot of the families, though, have never played before, and they found out about us through word of mouth, through a therapist referral or something like that. So what we have also done over the years, although not recently in the midst of everything being virtual, is we had family game night sort of lessons. We taught parents how to play role-playing games so that they could play with their kids. And then we had a GM workshop for the kids so that they could be game masters for their parents, which is a great sort of flip of the script for a lot of the youth that are in our program, because then they get to be the one to shepherd their parents through this really cool collaborative storytelling experience. So that's been a really neat opportunity to help build that. When we first started our webinar program in the midst of everybody being locked down, that was a big goal, was to try to help families play together, because so much of it's way easier for a family to sort of split up and everybody gets on their own devices and sort of tunes out. But there's really, especially when people are in a bubble together, if they can play board games, they can play tabletop role-playing games of any kind. That really has a fantastic way to bring a family together. And I really hope that people are taking this opportunity when we're all sort of stuck inside with people that we care about to leverage that to play a game together.
Yeah.
Is there a singular moment in your career that made you go down this path, or were you seeing problems that weren't being solved by traditional means that you thought maybe this might be a better way to fix certain? And what are those problems that you see with the youth that you thought this would kind of solve?
Well, you asked me a lot of questions right there. That's all right. Let me unpack that. So there is so my background is in drama therapy. I didn't say that this podcast. So I have been an advocate for embodied storytelling as a way of creating insight, growth, and change for a decade plus now. So that wasn't a big shift for me to decide that role-playing games were a great way to help people have, psychological growth, emotional growth, et cetera, community growth. The moment that it clicked for me was before even I founded Wheelhouse Workshop with Adam Johns, I was running an after school program just as kind of a supervisor. I wasn't really even doing it intentionally. It was just a sort of drop-in program for kids to play D&D, and they were getting supervised basically, but they were DMing for each other, and it was kind of a Wild West sort of experience. And then I stepped in as the game master, and then it was there that I started to see just how powerful it was that I could, as the game master, design those in-game scenarios to help them practice real-world social behaviors, or like just help them feel like they belonged. Because a lot of the kids that were coming to that program had some degree of social setback. They had been outcasted or whatever, marginalized in some way by the groups that they wanted to participate with or didn't want to participate with, and were continually struggling in one way or another. And then I realized just how the kids wanted to show up. And it was actually a parent who emailed to say thanks, who said, this is the only time my child looks forward to leaving the house. And we can actually get him to do his homework in order to go to the social group. And this is someone who's been, in social skills training programs. I'm air quoting that because I hate that model, but he's been in social skills training programs his whole life and had never enjoyed being around other people. And it wasn't until he was given an opportunity to do something fun and relate to people in the way that he wanted to relate to them, that he actually wanted to start practicing and being around other people. And that was where it clicked, because we can certainly give all the M&Ms we want for a kid to learn how to wait his turn and, make eye contact. But when we actually help people flourish socially on the terms that they want to, that is where we really can see the most benefit for young people. It's actually respecting their autonomy and not trying to manipulate them into performing to be social, but actually help them want to see the value of participating with other people.
I'm curious on how your program has had to adapt, if any, to the fact that, in different countries, there's different cultures, different ways that people look at education, ways that people, just all kinds of things that could be different. Have you had to adapt the programs in those countries? And if so, what do those changes look like?
No, actually, not overtly. I am not the facilitator for those international groups. Those tend to be running in the mornings because of time zone issues. Right. I don't run those groups. I run afternoon groups. I run 5 groups a week right now, on top of my work as the executive director. So my understanding is that as far as the sort of cultural things that might show up, there's a little bit of a sort of a selection bias in terms of who comes to us. If there's like big objections to any sort of the content, those parents might self-select out of reaching out to us. So we don't actually do advertising. We're entirely sustained by word of mouth and sort of organic advertising. So people who really choose to come to us, we don't really have to convince anybody to join our program. So and I would have to ask our facilitators, the ones that run those European groups. I think that one of the interesting things about it is that we have players from different countries all playing together. So I've talked to the facilitators who are just marveling at just the fact that when I was a kid, we had a pen pal. And, I grew up in Texas, and my pen pal was like in New York or something like that. And that was wild to just have someone you're in contact with who's in such a different place from Texas, like New York. But now these kids are getting an opportunity to play and connect with and understand and collaborate with people in, other parts of the world, Denmark to Australia or whatever it is. And that's it's like a pen pal 2.0 to allow these kids to not just, have a asymmetric communication back and forth, but to actually actively collaborate is a really neat opportunity for them.
And I think it's great to have that interaction with people from other countries and things of that nature, because it just helps broaden your worldview of, we're not the only ones here, And so I think that part of it is just exciting to be, it's cool for a kid to be able to witness that when they're young, when they're able to adapt and change and be malleable. Because I feel like the older we get, the more like closed in we get with our ideas and, just like mindset and stuff like that. But kids they're curious. They want to explore and they want to see new things. And as long as you enable that, it's awesome what can happen. So
yeah, especially when they're given an opportunity not just to like talk and not to feel the burden of having to come up with what to say, but they're given an opportunity for authentic, relational, social play, which is like it's a playground, right? It's a what do we want to do today kind of mindset where this explosion of creativity and collaboration can happen. So it really is. I have said often over the years that I think the world would be a better place if more people were able to play together, especially in a way where that play is collaborative and relational and social, and that's what we're doing. Is these kids are getting to connect and understand each other's perspectives. That's not just what do you like to eat for breakfast where you live, right? It's so much bigger than that and more expansive than that. So it's really an exciting time, I think.
Yeah.
So do you have any cool stories you could tell us?
I guess like what would be the most memorable or the biggest like transitional change that you saw in whether it be a person or whether it be just like a program that you ran, anything of that nature that was just like, this one really stands out because I saw this growth during this time. That was just really, really cool to see.
Yeah, so I'll say this: we have 100, like I said, 130 clients a week right now, and I've been running programs since the beginning, obviously, as a founder, and I have some of my participants who I've worked with for years now. Some participants come for 10 weeks, and then they've got what they want, and then they can move on. They can go to game stores and do that, and other families choose to stay with us for much longer. And I have one participant who I'd worked with for 4+ years now. Since they were a teenager and now they're an emerging adult. What I think was really fantastic about this particular situation is that this participant was told by a counselor, by a psychotherapist, that they would need years of psychotherapy before ever being able to function in a social group. And then as they've played in a Dungeons and Dragons group, they had a sibling there for a while, in and out, which helped support their relationship. This participant was recently in one of our tabletop role-playing game programs, Dungeons and Dragons programs. They, at the end of the session, they put their hands on the table and stood up and they said, I have an announcement to make. I wanted to let everyone know I'm going to college soon. And I wanted to let you all know because you're like my second family. That's what's possible with that kind of relational social play, is we can connect with other people in a way that's so much bigger than just a support group. Because we're not just supporting each other, we're supporting each other while we are saving the world. We're supporting each other while we are collaborating and doing exciting and interesting things. There's another story I thought of where the in-game scenario was really tied towards, and the way that it was facilitated was really tied towards that particular participant's areas of social growth. So all of our groups are virtual now, which means most of the dice are rolled on tables off screen, which means there's a little bit of a tendency for some folks to fudge their dice rolls and lie to me about how high their dice rolls are. And this happens, right? And this happens, and it depends as a game master how you want to address that. Because if I say, I think you're lying, then that's very accusatory, and that might really disrupt some of the rapport that I have with my players. And that is the most crucial part of any outcome we can have, is how much we trust each other, and especially that I can provide that sort of leadership and coaching. So I didn't want to say, I think you're lying on your dice rolls. What I had to do was navigate the way that I was game mastering for them so that they would understand the kinds of impact that has. So what I was doing since I realized that, is whenever they would get a super high dice roll or claim to have a super high dice roll, I would respond with very low impact or low affect. I would say, okay, how much damage do you do? Great. Awesome. That's a lot of damage. Great. Moving on. Next person. What do you do? And they're like, well, I want to make an attack roll. Okay. Roll for it. Awesome. I got a 5. Oh, describe what your character does when they miss. How do they hold the weapon? Oh yeah. Okay. Now you describe how the weapon hits the armor and then bounces off of it. And then I was doing all of this high affect excitement, putting the spotlight on the player who's not successful, and then the player who's getting all their super high, never
20,
rolls
20.
Right, exactly. Never rolls lower than a 17. And also on every D6 never rolls less than a 4, right? Just no statistical way that is accurate. And then we did this game where it was they were at the Band of the Battles. It was a Battle of the Bands spoof where these two bands were making music constructs and fighting each other with music constructs. And then the players had to go in to win the Battle of the Bands. They had to fight one of these music constructs. And it was, there were rolling stones that were attacking them. It was a whole thing. I like puns. So it was this. And at the end of that day, after they had successfully defeated the music construct and the Rolling Stones, and I think there was also Beatles. They didn't get that reference, but they also fought Beatles. And I believe possibly Crickets, which is even more esoteric than Beatles. But that player, we always do a checkout process at the end of the day. And I ask, what is something you learned? And the player who had been historically lying on their dice rolls, or I'm assuming lying on their dice rolls, said, I learned that low rolls actually can be way more interesting than high rolls. Oh. And it was a great way to have them reflect on that. So the use there that I was doing with my affect, right, and responding, that sort of reinforces why this game is so powerful, and the kinds of leadership opportunities that a game master has is to respond with enthusiasm and affect. So my excitement over low rolls and my excitement over curiosity about what it looks like when your axe bounces off the side of that rolling stone. What does that look like? And that is the way to get the players excited about both the successes and the misses, so to speak, so that they can be respond to both with equal opportunity. That it's interesting when your weapon bounces off the side. What does your face look like when you reflect that that stone is about to get a rolling attack on you again because you missed? Right?
Yeah.
That's the excitement part of what does this narrative look like, so that when they can go into their world, into the world outside of the game, they can respond similarly with, how do I want to engage with this? What is my choice and how I respond? It's not just defeat. It's, I have an opportunity here for this to be interesting.
Yeah. The player always, that's what's so cool about D&D is just the
Freaking beautiful.
no matter what happens, like there's always opportunities for unique experiences, whether it's good or bad. You're like, you go in here and like, we're gonna win this, and it's like, nope, we're definitely not winning this, but we fell down a pit and now we have to figure out how to get out, and that's also really exciting to figure out how to get out. And then when you succeed in that, then it's like,
This
oh my
person's
gosh,
about to
that's
die.
even more exciting.
Surrounded by zombies.
Yeah.
There's no way we're gonna save her.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually talk about that in our training program also, when we're training new game masters, is to talk about the spectrum of yes. And sometimes a no but or a no and is way more interesting than yes. Is no, that doesn't work. And something extra bad happens is sometimes way more exciting than, yeah, you hit. Right?
Right.
Or the no, but you get a little closer to your goal.
Yeah.
Those are way more interesting sometimes than just like succeeding and rolling damage dice.
Yeah, great segue into the training programs. I'm curious to know, you are now doing training programs. Which when did you start doing the training program side of it? And if so, I'm gonna guess what it is based off of what I read, and then
right.
I'm sure there's things that I have wrong here. But it sounds like you are training other people to basically take the Game to Grow method into, whether it be a school, whether it be their, I don't know, daycare, any kind of place where there's like children that want to play games and stuff like that, and letting them take that. But you are providing the training for them to do that, but they're not going to be like a client of yours long term. It's just, here, we're going to give you the training that you need, you to run with it, and then you can then take this method out and use it how you wish.
That was very well put. Yes.
Oh, perfect.
So the training program has existed in one way or another since we started. So we've always been able to do consultations, and so I've done consultations with individuals all over the world. Just an hour, right? It's like a Q&A. They talk about what they want to do, and then talk to myself or Adam Johns or another one of our team to help them orient towards getting their program started, or working with a difficult client or something like that. Or client they're having difficulties with. There's no difficult clients, of course, but then as we last about mid last year, we brought on Elizabeth Kilmer, who's a doctor of psychology, who's been a part of our team as a facilitator for a while, running groups in Tacoma. We brought her on as a director of education and training, and so that is when we started offering webinars, which we have on our website right now. There's some of them are on demand, but we offer those every so often. People can come in from all walks of life to get some kind of support in whatever it is that webinar is about. But we also launched our fully fledged training program in the Game to Grow method of therapeutically applied role-playing games. And that is where we have 3 different trees, we call them, because we're Game to Grow. So we have trees, are our 3 different tracks that we have. We have a track for mental health professionals, which is your therapists, your school counselors, who are really working on supporting clients through specific types of insight, growth, and change. That'd be people who are working in the context of anxiety or depression, or social challenges related to any other kind of diagnosis, but also maybe additionally working on trauma, working on PTSD, et cetera. Then we have the educators track, which is much more aligned towards speaking and listening standards, supporting literacy, all these other kinds of outcomes that we have, more focused on regulation to help participants work through difficult in-school activities without being dysregulated, leaving class, right? So we want to use that program to reduce office referrals, to support in class participation, to support group work, that kind of outcomes. And then the third track we have is our community track, and that would be people who are running a board game store and want to make sure that their game is safe and supportive and enriching for their clients. They're not working on, or sorry, their customers. They're not working on overtly supporting insight, growth, and change, but they want to make sure that the program they're running at their Boys and Girls Club or the library or whatever that is oriented towards being life enriching. Because I don't know if you've ever been to Delve, a board game store, a convention where the game master was, maybe a little adversarial, or they were a little, I don't know, power went to their head, and it just wasn't fun. It wasn't supportive. It wasn't enriching in any way. And
I know a guy like that.
So we want to sort of make the world a better place through better gaming. In all three of those different tracks. And every one of those tracks has tiers. We have a level 1, level 2, level 3 in every one of those, which have different learning targets and objectives we work on in our training program. And then when you get through level 3, there's actually a process of submitting tape, where much like a therapy program where you become certified, you submit tape to us. We look over it, and if you are meeting the standards of the Game to Grow method of therapeutically applied role-playing games, you become then a certified Game to Grow method game master, which then we can point people in your direction. You can put that as sort of a standard that you meet on your website, so that you can also then show people that you're doing things in a way that supports insight, growth, and change. Because anybody can claim to be a game master supporting folks, but we have established over the last nearly a decade that we're doing this well. So we're going to be lending that sort of brand affiliation with people who've been through our training program.
Yeah, I'm curious. So this is a question I've been thinking about a lot. I've been wanting to ask you, and it's interesting. It's challenging because it's like there's a lot of controversy around. Obviously you heard multiple times about like violence being bad in video games and how that's like something that people often look at and we'll talk about. And I have a lot of friends. I know a lot of people that are speech therapists, and they work with kids often. And I've brought you guys up multiple times because I'm like, this program that they've developed is so cool. And like, as a gamer myself, like I love to see people use games to better themselves and to just get more. I mean, because I honestly attribute gaming to be a big part of how I was able to get more comfortable around people. Because like before, I had like a lot of real life friends. Like when I was in high school, I was pretty well isolated, but I had this circle of people that were really strong on the internet, and those are the people that I like bonded with really, really well, many of which I'm still friends with today. But I've talked to them about like, hey, like what about using tabletop role playing games for doing this? Here's this website, go check this out, do this. And there's this, I guess, a stigma of, well, games are violent or they don't help or whatever. Like, what do you say when there is that, objection to using games for kids in those situations?
So I think I would start off by saying not all games are the same, right? There's sort of an assumption, especially on some of these folks, that they're thinking of like the Mortal Kombat sort of video game crisis of the mid 90s, which wasn't really a thing. There wasn't really a rise in youth violence associated with Mortal Kombat or any of these things. That was a drug epidemic. It's a very different world than just the impact of Mortal Kombat. So I definitely want to understand where that person is coming from and why they have those sorts of assumptions, because then it's easier to unpack if we're speaking the same language. If they say, video games are bad, I want to say, oh, what do you mean when you say that? Or where are you getting that information, so I can better understand how to have this conversation. And I also want to make sure that I show people research, and I have not done the research, but I can point to it about how screen time is not actually related with negative social outcomes as a sort of a black and white issue. There's a lot of nuances to it.
Right.
So I want to make sure that I help educate them and elevate the higher discourse around this, that it's not like black and white. There was a time in our history where comic books were the downfall of the youth, right? Before that, it was poetry, right? Like Plato was like, I don't know, we should have poetry for the youth because it tells the stories of the gods doing a bunch of bad stuff, and that could be corrupting.
Yeah.
Right. Like we've had moral panics throughout the human experience. So I want to make sure that we sort of put all of this in context before we do any of that. I think youth also have a much greater capacity for separating reality and fiction than we give them credit for, because when I was a kid, I mean, video games existed. I'm not that old, obviously. But we had a lot of playground time where like I was a Power Ranger and I was, or we played cops and robbers. And of course we killed each other on the playground, right? Like we shot each other with guns and my pretend guns on the playground. Like none of that made us violent. That was just, we were playing. It was navigating sort of the, hey, I shot you. No, you didn't. Which is a really important thing for youth to deal with. Like, you missed me. No, I didn't miss you. I shot you. Well, we're just playing pretend anyway. There's no arbiter of truth and fiction anyway. So we're just navigating this pretend social play. So I always want to relate that people have been playing aggressively, cops and robbers, or back in the day, even for like the boomer generation, cowboys and Indians, or whatever the case of like this like aggressive social play is actually also really healthy. When you look at the impacts of like rough and tumble play for young kids, it's actually healthy to help them navigate boundary setting and things like that too. So I generally, to go back to your question about how I explain this to people, is I tend to not explain what Dungeons and Dragons is or Pathfinder is. I tend to explain it in the context of narrative social play. This is a collaborative role-playing story game of chance. And then I unpack it from there about what it looks like to be collaborative. This game is a game where we're not just working against each other. We're not trying to kill each other. We're on the same team. All our players are actually supporting each other towards common outcomes, but not just like taking turns. They're like building on each other's ideas to create a new thing by their powers combined, which is a really transformative experience. It's also a story game where we get to navigate successes and failures. And that's the fun part of the game. Sometimes struggling is more fun than winning. So I'm really helping the players now understand and how to build that sort of self-regulation capacity. So this is the way that I talk to teachers or parents or therapists now, is I focus entirely on the other stuff. I was actually having a meeting with a group of executives at a Texas-based hospital to discuss with them about putting our programming with hospitalized youth. And the administrators were concerned at first because they didn't understand how this game could in any way be supportive towards helping these youth. And then at the end of the meeting, they were like, "You're in Seattle, right? We can't hire you." Like, no, so sorry. But that's it's so important to be able to discuss what this game is outside of combat and violence. And to be perfectly honest, if you want to get really down the rabbit hole, we can change the nature of combat in these games as well. So, I grew up in the late 80s where I was watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, like the Ninja Turtles have swords and nunchucks and like they have weapons. They're not Nerf, right? They're like legit katanas. But what they did in the cartoon is the bad guys were all robots. So Donatello could slice through those guys, and they were human, but when they were sliced, they turned into robots, right? Yeah. So we can do the same thing in the game where the enemies are not necessarily, there's no moral conundrum when you're fighting a robot, a construct, right? It's very clearly you can destroy that thing with the full force of your fireball, and it is awesome and exciting and cool, and there's no question about that being okay to take out the robots, right? As opposed to that guard who's just, trying to feed his family. Then there's all this moral conundrum about what you do, and should you talk to him? Should you do non-lethal? All these other kinds of rabbit holes you can go down. And sometimes with our teen programs, like I want to introduce that kind of moral clarification, the values opportunity there to talk about what's important and what our moral code is. But for youth, I want them to destroy constructs.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, is like not saying, I like how that you mentioned, like you don't say, let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons. It's instead, let's talk about all like the storytelling aspect, the choice and the options, stuff like that. Because I think a lot of what people think about when they first think of video games is going to be Call of Duty. You're shooting people, terrorists, all these different things that they put into that game that is one of the more popular games in society. And that can just immediately put up a wall between you and that other person of like, oh, no, they're not going to listen to you after that point when you say, oh, Call of Duty, and there's all these other things that are out there that are really great that just will blow your mind at how touching and just like emotionally just how much they can change. I mean, I don't know if you've ever played the game Night in the Woods. Did you ever play that game?
I bought it when it was on sale, and I played it. I played like the first 10 minutes of it, so I haven't played it but to know.
Yeah,
about it.
That was a really interesting game. And then after hearing the story of the developer behind that, there's a really fascinating story behind all of that. But it was a really, I mean, it made me kind of look at depression in a different way that I've never done before after having played that game, because you're kind of in the head of this little character that comes back to this town and thinking that everything's gonna be great and the way it was, and then you find it's not the way it was and everything's changed, and just trying to cope and deal with this the fact that what you want, your comfort that you wanted to come back to, is no longer there. So how do you cope and adapt to that? And it was a really, really, really clever and just, I mean, beautifully designed game and all that stuff. But that was one that really hit me hard, with just like the emotional storytelling and stuff like that. But there's some new things you guys might be doing down the pipeline that you want to expand into. Can you talk a little bit about what the future of Game to Grow looks like as a whole, and where you guys plan to take things next?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, COVID was a big shift in how we did our services. So as of March of last year, all of our programming was in Seattle. We rented out locations around Seattle, and we did direct services with people in person. And when we shifted to online, we expanded our audience based on where the geographic location was. And that sort of was the catalyst for looking at other ways we could leverage specifically video conferencing to get our services out to an even broader audience, to keep serving more and more people. And then that has started, the whole Game to Grow team is sort of percolating on how we can continue to support communities around the country and around the world. And so we have a couple of things in the pipeline that I'm really excited about. None of them are official yet. They sort of depend on funding largely as a nonprofit. But we have, I mentioned earlier, potential hospital groups. So there's a lot of youth in hospitals who don't have access to social play. They might be, there's some great programs to get video games so they can still play, they can still engage in a hobby that they love that connects them to other people remotely. But we really want to have that social play, that collaborative social play, as an opportunity for kids who are hospitalized. And so that's coming down the pipeline. We're speaking with some Texas-based children's hospitals about putting this program in place. As far as implementing that down the road, that will largely depend on what capacity we have to hire the right people to maintain that program. But that's really exciting. I'm so excited about that. It's always been a demographic that I've really wanted to serve, as hospitalized youth. Yeah. Likewise, we have been speaking with a foster care clinic out here in Washington State about potentially expanding services for foster care youth, because there's a real need for community and consistency when youth are moving around a lot. So having youth be able to connect with the same group every week and feel like they're continuing to contribute to something as powerful as saving the world is a really powerful and important thing that I'm hoping to do as well. That will be entirely scholarship based, so that is once again sort of dependent on funding. We have talked about some of the members of our team, the Game to Grow team, Dr. Elizabeth Kilmer and Dr. Jared Kilmer, both have a lot of experience using role-playing games in the VA with military veterans, and we have been working on establishing a veteran program, and we've been working and talking with the Wounded Warrior Project to help us with some recruitment and launch that program. That will also, once again, entirely depend on our funding capacity for that. And so there's lots of different things we have coming down the pipeline that would be really, really great. Our training program, I want to sponsor some teachers to attend that training program for free, because I was a classroom teacher for many years, and I know how hard it is to pay for things out of pocket or to get administrative support. So we're starting a scholarship program for teachers to get trained to bring the life-enriching magic of games back to their schools. So all of these things are coming down the pipeline. This year, we have pilot programs for all of the things I mentioned about happening this year. So that is by 2022, I want to be serving twice as many people. I want to have our program in hospitals, starting in Texas, because we have a lot of connections there through contacts, both from my life in Texas prior, and as well as professional contacts. So that's the first step.
Man, you're being busy, already busy,
Yes.
but even more busy going into it. That's awesome.
I remember sleeping.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm excited to see, like, I mean, I think the hospitals, I mean, that's huge. And then the foster programs, I think, is really awesome. You imagine like a kid bouncing around, like going from foster care to foster care and be like, oh, you know, Critical Core? Oh, you play that? Let's play Critical Core. Like that would be such a cool thing to see. That becomes like such a, I mean, just like how D&D has become like a resurgence in recent years, or I'd say the last 5 years or whatever. It's like, it's now a name that people recognize that aren't just nerdy people, you know, people that are just, they just people that know what it is. Like it would be awesome to see that just grow and expand and get out there. So, I mean,
yeah. Has anyone graduated from playing with y'all and like gone and done their own campaign and used those same things they've seen?
We definitely have participants who leave our program and then continue playing. Either in the community, they continue to, you know, go to game stores, or, you know, maybe not anymore, but they have their own sort of social group they play D&D with, or whatever role playing game. And that's one of the things that we really are excited about sharing with them, is like, if you go to a gaming convention, you can see how much community and culture is built around this. And a lot of the people that, like I mentioned earlier, play in our program don't have a social network. They don't have a social support system. And the research will show you that having a social support system in adolescence actually turns into positive life outcomes later in life. Direct correlation between youth connectedness and decrease in obesity, decrease in drug use, decrease in suicidality, all these later life outcomes that are directly tied to what your social support system looked like when you were in your youth. So one of the other things that we're seeing now with COVID is that we're all locked down now, but we're not, and that's like revealed to us just how isolated we always have been. How, like, we go to work, we go to the community, you know, go to the Starbucks or whatever and interact with people, but we're fundamentally lonely. Like, loneliness is an epidemic and has been for a long time. So what we're doing as we're supporting people is giving them not only that fun experience for 90 minutes a week, but we're giving them access to a tribe, a community of people, when they can go to a game store and they can see people. You're like me, you're like me, you're like me. We're all here because we celebrate this. We have a shared language and a shared culture. And that, I mean, you can go to a gaming convention as soon as they start happening again and see like 80,000 people who are now my tribe. And that is one of the greatest gifts we can provide the people that come to us. And we're seeing that as people are, you know, they'll engage with each other in our program and then connect on Discord and then have a game. Then they'll talk about it in our game, and they'll say, here's what we did in our other game. And I'll coach them a little bit on game mastering tips and tricks of how to maybe do that a little differently. It's been a really interesting and fantastic expansion of our program for sure.
Well, I'm excited to see where 2021 and 2022 and beyond takes you all. I mean, it's been amazing just to see from 2017 to now, like where things have gone. And I'm excited to see that COVID hasn't been, I mean, it's obviously affected everybody, but it sounds like it's definitely had some positive impacts. Obviously COVID's not a positive thing, but just like you've been able to reach more people with this because of having to shift and quickly adapt and stuff like that. And a lot of people are having to figure out like, okay, how do we adapt to this new world? Like people are going remote now, and like there's, you know, more companies are opening up to these things. So there's a lot of things that people are starting to look at, like just rethink how they do everything. And to see all the new programs and everything you guys have going on is really awesome. So where can people, like if anybody wants to learn more about you all, wants to find out about what programs are coming in, you know, Critical Core, is that, I'm assuming that's still something they can invest into?
The pre-order store is closed, but if you go to our website, you can learn more about it, and you can sign up to be notified when it's finally
retail
released
sale
and out for digital download, especially because we'll do digital download before we'll do a physical release. Okay. So if people want to get access to it digitally, they can do that. They will be able to do that before. We don't have to worry about all of the manufacturing. Right. So that's going to happen much sooner. So if people want to learn more about Game to Grow, they can go to gametogrow.org. That has access to everything. You can see the menu at the top. We'll tell you where you can find out more about our training program, about the groups that we run. I also encourage everyone to go to gametogrow.org/support. Because we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and if you liked the ideas of anything that we're doing or any of those ideas we have in the pipeline, you can make a donation there. You can also just change your Amazon to smile.amazon.com, and all of the stuff you're already purchasing will give a small bit of proceeds towards Game to Grow. There's lots of different ways you can support our program there. And if you want to just stay informed, you can go to gametogrow.org/newsletter, and we send out not too many emails that keep you posted on what we're up to. We're also on the socials at Game to Grow, and that's Game TO Grow. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Well, Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. It's awesome to catch up. Like, I think the last time we ran into you guys was at a convention in real life, IRL, thing that we don't see as much anymore. Yeah. But
it was just me last year.
That's
2 years
right.
for Brett.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been awesome to just chat with you, catch up, and learn about all the things you guys have going on. And everybody, again, like Adam said, like if you're listening and you've related to this in any way, definitely go to gametogrow.org and provide them some support, because they are doing amazing things with our youth, and our youth is what's going to be, our leaders and, future business owners and the future. I mean, that's what we need to put the focus on, our future as much as possible. And I think that's it's awesome that you guys are, pushing everything in the positive direction. So thank you very much for joining us.